The Roman Empire, from republic to ruin. Welcome, dear listeners, to the first chapter of our series, The Most Powerful Empires in History. Tonight, we journey back to a time when a small city on the banks of the Tiber River rose to dominate the known world, shaping the course of civilization for centuries to come. This is the story of the Roman Empire, a tale of triumph, treachery, and transformation that continues to captivate us today. So find a quiet corner, let your imagination wander, and join me as we explore the rise and fall of an empire that built roads to eternity, but couldn't escape its own shadows. A humble beginning on 7 hills. Our story begins around 753 BCE in a small settlement on the banks of the Tiber River. Legend tells us that Rome was founded by twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, who were raised by a she-wolf after being abandoned as infants. Romulus, the stronger of the two, eventually killed his brother and became the first king of Rome, naming the city after himself. While this tale is steeped in myth, it captures the spirit of Rome, a city born of conflict, ambition, and destiny. Rome started as a modest village on 7 hills, its people a mix of Latin farmers, Etruscan craftsmen, and Sabine warriors. The early Romans were ruled by kings who laid the foundations of the city's institutions. But in 509 BCE, the last king, Tarquin the Proud, was overthrown in a revolution led by Lucius Junius Brutus. The Romans, weary of tyranny, established a republic, a government where power was shared among elected officials, guided by the Senate. This new system, with its checks and balances, would become the blueprint for modern democracies. But even in its infancy, Rome was a city of contrasts, proud of its freedom, yet built on the backs of slaves. How did this fledgling republic transform into an empire that spanned 3 continents? The answer lies in a potent mix of military prowess, strategic alliances, and an unquenchable thirst for expansion. The rise of a republic. In its early days, Rome was surrounded by enemies, the Etruscans to the north, the Samnites to the south, and the Greeks in the Italian boot. But the Romans were master strategists. They built roads that connected their growing territory, allowing troops to move swiftly and supplies to flow freely. The Appian Way, started in 312 BCE, was the first of many, a marvel of engineering that would outlast the empire itself. Rome's military was its greatest asset. The legions, disciplined and innovative, revolutionized warfare with formations like the testudo, where soldiers locked shields like a turtle's shell. They conquered Italy piece by piece, absorbing defeated peoples not as slaves, but as allies, granting them citizenship and rights. This inclusive policy fueled Rome's growth, turning former enemies into loyal citizens. By 264 BCE, Rome controlled the entire Italian peninsula, its gaze turning outward. But what would happen when this rising power clashed with another some Mediterranean giant? The stage was set for a conflict that would test Rome's mettle and forge its destiny. The Punic Wars, clashes with Carthage. Rome's expansion brought it into conflict with Carthage, a wealthy Phoenician city-state in North Africa. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE, was a brutal struggle for control of Sicily. Rome, with no navy to speak of, built one from scratch, and innovating with the corvus, a boarding device that turned sea battles into land fights. After 23 years of bloodshed, Rome emerged victorious, claiming Sicily and beginning its overseas empire. The Second Punic War, 218-201 BCE, was even more dramatic. Carthage's general Hannibal, a military genius, crossed the Alps with elephants, and invaded Italy, winning stunning victories at Trebia, Trasimene, and Cannae. For 15 years, he ravaged the countryside, bringing Rome to its knees. But Rome refused to yield. They raised new armies, harassed Hannibal's supply lines, and finally defeated him at Zama in 202 BCE. Carthage was humbled, its power broken. The Third Punic War, 149-146 BCE, was Rome's vengeance. Carthage was razed, its fields salted. Rome now dominated the Mediterranean, but victory came at a cost. Endless war had changed Rome, sowing seeds of internal strife. Would the Republic survive its own success? The fall of the Republic. As Rome's empire grew, so did its problems. Wealth poured in from conquered lands, but it enriched the few while the many suffered. The Senate, once a bastion of wisdom, became a den of corruption. Generals like Marius and Sulla wielded armies as personal tools, marching on Rome itself. The Republic teetered. Enter Julius Caesar, a brilliant general and politician. His conquest of Gaul, 58 to 50 BCE, brought vast territories and wealth, but also envy from his rivals. Crossing the Rubicon River in 49 BCE with his legions, he ignited civil war, declaring, "The die is cast." Victorious, he became dictator for life, reforming the calendar, expanding citizenship, and centralizing power. But his ambition proved fatal. On the Ides of March in 44 BCE, he was assassinated by senators fearing tyranny, including his friend Brutus. Chaos ensued, leading to more wars and the rise of his adopted heir, Octavian, the birth of an empire. After defeating Mark Antony and Cleopatra at Actium in 31 BCE, Octavian became Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. The Republic was dead. The empire was born. Augustus brought peace, the Pax Romana, a golden age of stability and prosperity that lasted over 200 years. He reformed the military, built roads and aqueducts, and patronized the arts. Rome's population swelled to 1 million, its forums and temples gleaming with marble. Writers like Virgil and Ovid celebrated the empire's glory, while engineers constructed wonders like the Colosseum and the Pantheon. But beneath the splendor, cracks formed. Succession was unstable, leading to tyrants like Caligula and Nero, whose madness and cruelty foreshadowed trouble. The empire expanded under Trajan and Hadrian, reaching its peak in the 2nd century CE, but overextension strained resources. Borders like Hadrian's Wall marked the limits of Roman power. The splendor of Rome. At its height, the Roman Empire was a marvel. Its roads connected distant provinces, enabling trade and travel. Aqueducts brought fresh water to cities. Baths like Caracalla's were social hubs, and forums buzzed with life. Gladiatorial games entertained the masses, while philosophers like Seneca pondered the human condition. Christianity spread quietly, its message of hope resonating in a world of inequality. But the empire's wealth masked growing problems. Inflation soared, corruption festered, and the military, once loyal to the state, pledged allegiance to emperors who paid the highest. Barbarian tribes pressed the borders, and internal divisions weakened the core. In 395 CE, the empire split into East and West, a division that would prove fatal. The fall and the echoes. The Western Empire crumbled under invasions. The Visigoths sacked Rome in 410 CE, a shock to the world. The last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed in 476 CE, marking the end. The Eastern Empire, Byzantium, endured for another 1,000 years, preserving Roman law and culture. Rome's fall was not sudden, but a slow unravel, economic decline, military overstretch, and internal decay. Yet its legacy lives on. In our laws, languages, and architecture, the Colosseum still stands, a reminder of glory and ruin. What if Rome had not fallen? Would the world be different? The empire's story ends, but its mysteries endure, waiting for us to ponder what might have been. The Mongol Empire, Conquest and Legacy. In the vast steppes of Mongolia, where the wind whispers secrets of ancient warriors, the Mongol Empire rose like a storm, sweeping across continents and reshaping the world. From the humble beginnings of Temujin, who became Genghis Khan, the empire expanded to become the largest contiguous land empire in history, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe. But what drove this unstoppable force? How did a nomadic people conquer civilizations far more advanced than their own? And what was the true legacy of their rule? A trail of destruction or a bridge between East and West? Let us continue our journey through the sands of time to uncover the story of an empire that changed the world forever. The rise of Genghis Khan. Our tale resumes with Temujin, the young boy who would become Genghis Khan. Born around 1162 into a nomadic tribe, Temujin's early life was marked by hardship. His father was poisoned when he was just 9, leaving his family destitute and abandoned by their clan. Temujin learned early the harsh lessons of survival, loyalty, strength, and cunning. As he grew, he forged alliances, gathered followers, and waged wars against rival tribes. By 1206, he had united the Mongols under his banner, earning the title Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. Genghis Khan was not just a conqueror, he was a visionary leader. He reorganized the Mongol society, breaking down tribal barriers and creating a merit-based system where loyalty and skill were rewarded, regardless of birth. He established a code of laws, the Yasa, that governed everything from military discipline to family life. But it was his military genius that set him apart. The Mongol army was a force like no other, mobile, disciplined, and ruthless. Mounted archers could strike from afar, while heavy cavalry charged with devastating power. Genghis Khan's tactics, feigned retreats, psychological warfare, and rapid strikes were revolutionary, allowing small forces to defeat much larger armies. With his army behind him, Genghis Khan set his sights beyond the steppes. In 1209, he launched a campaign against the Western Xia, a kingdom in northern China. The Mongols, unaccustomed to siege warfare, learned quickly, using captured engineers to breach walls and dams. By 1215, they had conquered the Jin dynasty, bringing northern China under their control. But Genghis Khan's ambitions did not stop there. He turned westward toward the Khwarezm Empire in Central Asia. A diplomatic incident, the murder of Mongol envoys, ignited a war that would see the Mongols sweep through Persia, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The empire expands. After Genghis Khan's death in 1227, his sons and grandsons continued his legacy, expanding the empire to its zenith. Ogedei Khan, his successor, conquered the remaining Chinese territories, while Batu Khan led the Golden Horde into Europe, sacking cities from Kiev to Hungary. The empire was divided into 4 khanates, each ruled by a descendant of Genghis Khan, but united by a shared legacy of conquest. Under Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis, the Mongol Empire reached its cultural peak. Kublai completed the conquest of China, founding the Yuan dynasty in 1271. He moved the capital to Khanbalik, modern-day Beijing, and embraced Chinese customs, blending Mongol strength with Han sophistication. Kublai's court was a hub of innovation, where Marco Polo, the Venetian explorer, marveled at the empire's wealth and wonders. The Mongols built roads, canals, and postal systems that connected distant lands, facilitating trade and cultural exchange. The Silk Road flourished under their rule, carrying goods, ideas, and even diseases across continents. But the empire's expansion came at a cost. The Mongols were ruthless conquerors, their campaigns marked by massacres and destruction. Cities that resisted were razed, their inhabitants slaughtered or enslaved. The death toll was staggering. Estimates suggest that 40 million people perished during the Mongol conquests, a number that would reshape demographics across Eurasia. Yet, in the wake of destruction came renewal. The Mongols' tolerance for religion and culture allowed conquered peoples to retain their identities, fostering a melting pot of ideas that would spark the Renaissance in Europe. The art of war and peace. The Mongol military was the engine of their empire. Genghis Khan revolutionized warfare with his emphasis on mobility, intelligence, and psychological terror. Mongol horsemen could travel 100 miles in a day, their bows deadly at full gallop. They used feigned retreats to lure enemies into traps, and their siege engines, catapults, and trebuchets brought down even the strongest walls. But Genghis Khan was not just a warrior, he was a statesman. He established a merit-based system, promoting talent over birthright, and created a code of laws that emphasized loyalty and justice. In times of peace, the Mongols were patrons of art and science. Kublai Khan's court was a center of learning, where astronomers, mathematicians, and artists from across the empire gathered. The Mongols adopted paper money, improved postal systems, and fostered trade along the Silk Road, connecting East and West in ways that would change the world. The Pax Mongolica, a period of relative peace under Mongol rule, allowed for the exchange of ideas, technologies, and goods, spreading innovations like gunpowder, printing, and the compass to Europe. But the empire's vastness was its Achilles heel. After Genghis Khan's death, the empire was divided among his sons, leading to rivalries and fragmentation. The Khanates gradually drifted apart, their unity fraying like a worn tapestry. The fall and the echoes. By the 14th century, the Mongol Empire began to crumble. In China, the Yuan dynasty fell to the Ming in 1368, driven by rebellion and natural disasters. The Golden Horde in Russia splintered, while the Ilkhanate in Persia was absorbed by local powers. The empire that had once spanned 24 million square kilometers was no more. Yet the Mongol legacy endures. Their conquests reshaped demographics, spreading genes and cultures across Eurasia. The empire's administrative innovations influenced future states, from the Ottoman Empire to the Mughal dynasty in India. Genghis Khan's descendants, like Timur and Babur, would build new empires on the foundations he laid. The Mongols also left a mark on global cuisine, language, and warfare. Their postal system inspired modern communication, while their tactics influenced military strategy for centuries. But the empire's legacy is double-edged, a blend of destruction and innovation, conquest and connection. As we reflect on this extraordinary chapter in history, we are left with a sense of awe at the power of one man's vision and the enduring impact of his empire. The Mongol story is a reminder that history is not just about conquest, but about the connections forged in the wake of change. And as we turn the page to the next chapter of our series, we carry with us the echoes of the steppes, a testament to the enduring spirit of a people who once ruled the world. The British Empire, the sun never sets. Imagine a small island nation perched on the edge of Europe, its shores lashed by the North Sea and its people hardened by centuries of invasion and strife. This is Britain in the 16th century, a kingdom on the cusp of greatness, where ambition and opportunity would forge an empire that spanned the globe. From the bustling ports of London to the distant shores of India, from the frozen wastes of Canada to the sun-drenched plains of Australia, the British Empire would become the largest in history, a realm so vast that the sun never set on its territories. But how did this tiny island nation rise to such unprecedented power? What secrets lay behind its expansion, and what forces would eventually bring it to its knees? Let us journey back to a time of sails and conquest, to uncover the story of an empire that reshaped the world. The seeds of empire. The story of the British Empire begins not with grand conquests, but with humble beginnings. In the late 15th century, as Spain and Portugal carved up the New World, England lagged behind, its eyes fixed on European affairs. But the Tudor monarchs, particularly Henry VII and his son Henry VIII, saw the potential in overseas exploration. Henry VII sponsored John Cabot's voyage in 1497, which landed on the coast of North America, laying claim to new lands for England. Yet it was under Elizabeth I that the seeds of empire truly took root. Elizabeth's reign was a golden age of discovery. She encouraged privateers like Sir Francis Drake and Sir Walter Raleigh to raid Spanish ships and establish colonies. Drake's circumnavigation of the globe from 1577 to 1580 brought back treasures and tales that ignited the English imagination. Raleigh's ill-fated colony at Roanoke in 1585 may have failed, but it planted the idea of permanent settlements in the New World. The defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 was a turning point, shattering Spain's naval supremacy and opening the seas to English expansion. But what drove this small nation to venture across the oceans? Was it gold, glory, or something more profound, a desire to spread Protestantism and challenge Catholic powers? The empire takes shape. By the 17th century, the British Empire began to take shape. In 1607, the Jamestown settlement in Virginia became England's first permanent colony in America, a foothold that would grow into 13 colonies along the Atlantic coast. These colonies were a mix of adventurers, Puritans seeking religious freedom, and indentured servants hoping for a new life. Tobacco, cotton, and sugar plantations fueled the economy, but they also sowed the seeds of slavery, as African captives were brought in chains to work the fields. Meanwhile, in Asia, the East India Company, chartered in 1600, established trading posts in India, starting with Surat in 1612. What began as commerce soon evolved into control as the company built forts, raised armies, and meddled in local politics. In the Battle of Plassey in 1757, Robert Clive's victory over the Nawab of Bengal marked the beginning of British dominance in India. The company's rule was ruthless, exploiting the land's riches while suppressing rebellions like the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, which led to direct crown control. Africa, too, felt Britain's touch. In 1652, the Dutch East India Company established a refreshment station at the Cape of Good Hope, which Britain seized in 1795. This foothold expanded into South Africa, where British settlers clashed with Boer farmers and Zulu warriors. The discovery of diamonds and gold in the late 19th century ignited the Boer Wars, solidifying British control but at a terrible human cost. Australia entered the empire's fold in 1788 when Captain Arthur Phillip landed with the First Fleet at Botany Bay, establishing a penal colony that would grow into a nation. New Zealand followed in 1840 with the Treaty of Waitangi, though conflicts with the Maori people marred the process. The empire's expansion was relentless, driven by a mix of economic interest, missionary zeal, and the belief in British superiority. But as the empire grew, so did the tensions within. How long could such a vast domain be held together? What cracks were beginning to show? The zenith of power. The 19th century marked the British Empire's zenith, an era when it controlled a quarter of the world's land and population. Queen Victoria's reign from 1837 to 1901 became known as the Victorian era, a time of industrial revolution, moral certitude, and imperial confidence. The empire's motto, "The sun never sets on the British Empire," was no exaggeration. Its territories spanned every time zone. India was the crown jewel, administered by the British Raj after 1858. The Suez Canal, opened in 1869, shortened the route to India, solidifying British dominance in trade. In Africa, the scramble for Africa saw Britain claim vast territories, from Egypt to South Africa, culminating in the Cape to Cairo Dream. The Opium Wars with China in the 1840s forced open ports and ceded Hong Kong, while in the Pacific, islands like Fiji and Tonga fell under British influence. The empire brought roads, railways, and telegraph lines to distant lands, spreading English language, law, and education. Missionaries carried Christianity, while administrators imposed British governance. But this civilizing mission often masked exploitation. Resources like rubber, tea, and minerals flowed to Britain, while indigenous peoples suffered under colonial rule. The Indian Rebellion of 1857 and the Zulu War of 1879 were stark reminders that empire came at a cost. Yet for Britain, the benefits were immense: economic power, global influence, and a sense of manifest destiny. But as the empire reached its peak, shadows loomed. What internal forces would begin to erode its foundations? And how would the winds of change from afar blow it apart? Cracks in the foundation. The early 20th century saw the empire's first major cracks. The Boer War, 1899-1902, was a costly victory against Dutch settlers in South Africa, exposing military weaknesses and stirring anti-imperial sentiment at home. World War I, 1914-1918, was a watershed. The empire mobilized millions from its colonies, but the war's toll weakened Britain's economy and morale. Indian soldiers fought bravely in Europe, only to return home demanding independence. The Amritsar Massacre in 1919, where British troops killed hundreds of unarmed protesters, ignited widespread outrage and fueled the independence movement, led by Mahatma Gandhi. In Ireland, the Easter Rising of 1916 led to independence in 1922, a loss that signaled the empire's unraveling. The interwar years saw growing nationalism in colonies. Egypt gained nominal independence in 1922, while India's nonviolent resistance gained momentum. The Great Depression further strained resources, making it harder to maintain control over distant territories. World War II, 1939 to 1945, was the final blow. Britain's victory came at a staggering cost, its economy in ruins, its military exhausted. The wars also exposed the hypocrisy of fighting for freedom while denying it to colonial subjects. Indian troops fought valiantly, but upon return, demands for independence grew louder. The Atlantic Charter of 1941 promising self-determination, further fueled anti-colonial movements. The sun sets on the empire. After the war, the empire crumbled. India gained independence in 1947, partitioned into India and Pakistan amid violence that displaced millions. This triggered a wave of decolonization: Ghana in 1957, Malaysia in 1957, and a cascade of African nations in the 1960s. The Suez Crisis of 1956 was a humiliating defeat, exposing Britain's diminished power when it failed to retake the canal from Egypt. By the 1960s, the empire was in retreat, with Hong Kong handed over in 1997 as one of the last acts. What remained were small territories like the Falklands and Gibraltar. The empire's collapse was not just political, but cultural. Former colonies grappled with legacies of exploitation, while Britain faced immigration, identity crises, and the end of its global dominance. Yet the empire's influence endures in the English language spoken by billions, in legal systems from India to Canada, in cricket matches and tea rituals. It shaped the modern world, for better and worse, a legacy of innovation and inequality. The British Empire's story is one of ambition and hubris, of glory and downfall. It reminds us that power is fleeting, that empires rise and fall like the tides. And as we reflect on its legacy, we are left to ponder, what if the sun had never set? What other paths might history have taken? The empire's tale invites us to explore these questions, to delve into the complexities of power, and to learn from the past as we shape the future. The Ottoman Empire, sultans, secrets, and the sunset of glory. Picture a city where minarets pierce the sky like spears of faith, where the call to prayer echoes over bustling bazaars, and the scent of spices mingles with the salt of the sea. This is Constantinople, the jewel of the Ottoman Empire, a realm that spanned 3 continents and endured for over 6 centuries. From its humble beginnings in the Anatolian plains to its zenith as a superpower bridging east and west, the Ottoman Empire was a tapestry of conquest, culture, and intrigues. But how did a small Turkish tribe rise to challenge the Byzantine Empire and reshape the world? What secrets lay behind its legendary sultans and their harems? And what forces ultimately brought this colossal empire to its knees? Let us journey back to a time of silk roads and sword clashes to uncover the story of an empire that once held the fate of nations in its grasp. The birth of an empire. Our tale begins in the late 13th century, in the rugged hills of Anatolia, where a small Turkish tribe, led by a warrior named Osman I, carved out a foothold amidst the crumbling Byzantine Empire. Osman, whose name would give rise to the term Ottoman, was a visionary leader who united local tribes through a blend of military prowess and strategic marriages. His followers, known as Ghazis, warriors of the faith, waged holy wars against the infidels, expanding their territory with each victory. Osman's son, Orhan, continued the expansion, capturing the city of Bursa in 1326 and making it the first Ottoman capital. But it was the conquest of Constantinople in 1453 by Mehmed II, known as Mehmed the Conqueror, that truly marked the empire's ascent. For centuries, Constantinople had been the impregnable fortress of the Byzantine Empire, its massive walls a symbol of Christian defiance. Mehmed, a brilliant strategist, employed massive cannons crafted by Hungarian engineers to breach those walls. When the city fell, Mehmed rode triumphant through its gates, declaring it the new capital, Istanbul. The Hagia Sophia, once a church, was converted into a mosque, a potent symbol of Ottoman dominance. But what drove Mehmed to such lengths? Was it faith, ambition, or a desire to fulfill a prophecy that had haunted conquerors for generations? The age of expansion, with Constantinople secured, the Ottomans turned their gaze outward. Under sultans like Selim I and Suleiman the Magnificent, the empire expanded at a breathtaking pace. Selim, known as Selim the Grim, conquered the Mamluk Sultanate in 1517, bringing Egypt, Syria, and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina under Ottoman control. This not only boosted the empire's prestige, but also made the Sultan the Caliph, the spiritual leader of the Muslim world. Suleiman, Selim's son, took the empire to its zenith. Ruling from 1520 to 1566, he was a warrior, a lawgiver, and a patron of the arts. His armies pushed deep into Europe, capturing Belgrade and Budapest and laying siege to Vienna in 1529. Though Vienna held, the Ottomans dominated the Balkans, their influence stretching to the gates of Central Europe. In the east, Suleiman clashed with the Safavid Empire of Persia, securing Mesopotamia and expanding into the Caucasus. But the Ottoman Empire was more than a military machine. It was a mosaic of cultures, religions, and peoples. The sultans practiced tolerance, allowing Christians and Jews to practice their faiths under the millet system, where each community governed its own affairs. This diversity fueled the empire's creativity, leading to a golden age of art, architecture, and science. The Blue Mosque, with its cascading domes and intricate tiles, and the Topkapi Palace, a labyrinth of opulent halls and hidden gardens, stand as testaments to this era. But behind the splendor lay a darker side, the Dev Shirm system, where Christian boys were taken from their families, converted to Islam, and trained as elite Janissary soldiers or palace officials. Was this tolerance genuine or a tool of control? The height of splendor. Under Suleiman, the empire reached its cultural peak. Known as the lawgiver for his legal reforms, he codified laws that blended Islamic Sharia with Roman and Byzantine traditions, creating a system that governed a diverse population with fairness and efficiency. The arts flourished. Poets like Fuzuli wove verses of love and mysticism, while architects like Sinan designed over 300 structures, including the Suleymaniye Mosque, a symphony of light and space. The empire's economy boomed, its markets overflowing with goods from silk to spices, its coinage the standard of trade. The harem, often misunderstood as a place of indulgence, was a center of political intrigues, where powerful women like Hurrem Sultan wielded influence behind the throne. But as the empire expanded, cracks began to appear. Corruption crept into the administration, the Janissaries grew rebellious, and the military, once invincible, stagnated. What forces were at work that would bring this colossus to its knees? The long decline. The 17th century marked the beginning of the end. The Ottomans suffered defeats at Vienna in 1683, losing Hungary and parts of the Balkans. The empire's vastness became a liability, its borders too long to defend, its economy strained by endless wars. Internal decay set in. Sultans became puppets of the Janissaries, who resisted reform while corruption eroded the bureaucracy. The 19th century brought humiliation. The Greek War of Independence in 1821, supported by European powers, carved out the first independent state from Ottoman territory. The Crimean War, 1853-1856, exposed military weaknesses, while the Tanzimat reforms aimed to modernize but met resistance from conservatives. Nationalist movements in the Balkans chipped away at the empire, culminating in the Balkan Wars, 1912-1913, where it lost nearly all European holdings. World War I was the final blow. Allied with Germany, the Ottomans fought on multiple fronts, suffering defeats in Gallipoli and the Middle East. The empire collapsed in 1918, its territories partitioned by the victors. The Treaty of Sèvres in 1920 dismantled what remained, but the Turkish War of Independence, led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, forged the modern Republic of Turkey from the ashes. A legacy of light and shadow. The Ottoman Empire's legacy is a tapestry of triumph and tragedy. It bridged East and West, preserving classical knowledge and fostering a multicultural society. Its art, miniature paintings, calligraphy, and architecture like the Hagia Sophia influenced the world. The empire's legal system, blending Sharia with customary law, shaped governance in the Middle East. But its decline left scars, ethnic tensions, colonial exploitation, and the redrawing of maps that still fuel conflicts today. As we reflect on this great empire, we are left with questions. Could its fall have been averted? What if the sultans had embraced reform sooner? The Ottoman story is a reminder that even the mightiest can crumble, but their echoes endure. The Achaemenid Persian Empire, a legacy of tolerance and power. Imagine a vast empire stretching from the sun-baked deserts of Egypt to the snow-capped mountains of India, where diverse peoples lived under one rule, bound not by force alone, but by a vision of unity and tolerance. This is the Achaemenid Persian Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BCE, a realm that at its peak spanned over 5 million square kilometers and encompassed more than 44% of the world's population. It was an empire of roads and relays, of gardens and grand palaces, where the king's word was law and the gods of many nations were honored. But how did this empire rise from the ashes of conquest to become a model of governance? What secrets lie behind its famous tolerance? And what led to its dramatic fall at the hands of a young Macedonian king? Let us journey back to a time of kings and conquerors to uncover the story of an empire that shaped the ancient world. The rise of Cyrus the Great. Our tale begins with a young prince named Cyrus, born around 600 BCE in the kingdom of Anshan, a vassal state of the Median Empire. From humble beginnings, Cyrus rose to become one of history's greatest conquerors. In 550 BCE, he rebelled against his Median overlord, Astyages, and united the Persian tribes under his banner. His victory marked the birth of the Achaemenid Empire, named after his ancestor Achaemenes. Cyrus was not just a warrior. He was a visionary leader. He expanded his empire with astonishing speed, conquering the Lydian Empire in 546 BCE and the Babylonian Empire in 539 BCE. His conquest of Babylon was particularly remarkable. Rather than sacking the city, Cyrus entered as a liberator, freeing the Jewish captives and allowing them to return to Jerusalem. This act of mercy earned him a place in the Bible where he is praised as a Messiah figure. But was Cyrus truly a benevolent ruler, or was his tolerance a strategic tool to consolidate power? His famous Cyrus Cylinder, often called the first charter of human rights, proclaims religious freedom and the end of slavery, but some scholars argue it was propaganda designed to win over conquered peoples. Cyrus's empire was built on a foundation of tolerance and innovation. He allowed local customs and religions to flourish, appointing native governors and respecting their traditions. This policy of inclusion helped stabilize his vast realm, making it the largest empire the world had ever seen. But Cyrus's ambitions knew no bounds. He turned his gaze eastward toward the nomadic tribes of Central Asia, where he met his end in battle against the Massagetæ. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy lived on through his successors. The Golden Age under Darius the Great. Cyrus's son Cambyses II continued the expansion, conquering Egypt in 525 BCE and adding it to the empire, but it was Darius the Great who truly solidified the Achaemenid legacy. Ascending the throne in 522 BCE after a period of turmoil, Darius reorganized the empire into 20 satrapies, each governed by a satrap loyal to the king. He built a network of royal roads, stretching over 1,500 miles, connecting the empire's far-flung corners. The royal road from Susa to Sardis allowed messengers to travel the distance in just 7 days, a feat that would have taken months otherwise. Darius was also a master builder. He founded Persepolis, a grand capital that showcased the empire's diversity. Artisans from across the realm, Greeks, Egyptians, Babylonians, contributed to its construction, creating a palace complex that symbolized the harmony of the empire. The Apadana Hall, with its 72 columns, was a marvel, its walls adorned with reliefs depicting tribute bearers from every satrapy. But Darius's reign was not without conflict. In 489 BCE, the Ionian Revolt sparked the Greco-Persian Wars, a clash that would test the empire's might. The Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE was a stunning defeat for the Persians, but it was Darius's son, Xerxes III, who would lead the full invasion. In 480 BCE, Xerxes crossed the Hellespont on a bridge of boats, leading an army of over 200,000 men. The battles at Thermopylae and Salamis became legendary, with the Spartans' heroic stand and the Greek navy's triumph. Despite initial successes, the Persians were forced to retreat, marking the beginning of the empire's decline. The empire's cultural tapestry. The Achaemenid Empire was a melting pot of cultures, a realm where diversity was not just tolerated, but celebrated. Cyrus's policy of allowing conquered peoples to retain their customs and religions set a precedent for his successors. Jews, Babylonians, Egyptians, all were permitted to worship as they pleased, their temples rebuilt, and their traditions respected. This tolerance fostered loyalty and stability, allowing the empire to thrive. The empire's art and architecture reflected this cultural fusion. Persepolis, with its grand staircases and reliefs, incorporated elements from Assyrian, Egyptian, and Greek styles. The Immortals, the elite guard of 10,000 warriors, were clad in colorful robes, their spears tipped with silver and gold. The royal road facilitated trade, bringing silk from China, spices from India, and ivory from Africa to the empire's markets. Zoroastrianism, the empire's official religion, emphasized truth and justice, influencing the governance and ethics of the realm. But as the empire grew, so did the challenges of maintaining unity. Corruption crept in, rebellions flared, and the once mighty army grew complacent. The fall and the legacy. The empire's downfall came swiftly. In 334 BCE, Alexander the Great of Macedonia launched his invasion, crossing the Hellespont with an army of 40,000 men. Darius III, the last Achaemenid king, met him at Issus in 333 BCE, but was defeated. At Gaugamela in 331 BCE, Alexander's tactical genius shattered the Persian forces, leading to the fall of Persepolis. The city was looted and burned, its treasures carted away, its glory reduced to ashes. The Achaemenid Empire's collapse marked the end of an era, but its legacy endured. The empire's administrative system influenced Alexander's conquests and later empires like the Seleucids and Parthians. Its roads and postal system connected distant lands, fostering trade and cultural exchange. The Cyrus Cylinder, often called the first charter of human rights, proclaimed religious freedom and the end of slavery, a progressive ideal for its time. Yet questions linger. How did Cyrus build such a vast empire so quickly? What role did his tolerance play in its success? And what might have been if Alexander had not conquered Persia? These are the mysteries that make the Achaemenid story so compelling, a tale of power, wisdom, and the fleeting nature of empires. The Spanish Empire, the golden age of conquest. Imagine a fleet of ships, their sails billowing in the wind like the wings of a great bird, carrying the ambitions of a nation across vast oceans to unknown lands. This is the story of the Spanish Empire, a realm that rose from the Iberian Peninsula to become one of the most powerful forces in history, its influence stretching from the sun-drenched coasts of the Americas to the spice islands of Asia. But how did a kingdom ravaged by war transform into a global superpower? What secrets lay behind its legendary conquests? And what forces would eventually bring this mighty empire to its knees? Let us journey back to a time of explorers and emperors to uncover the tale of an empire that reshaped the world. The rise of a maritime power. Our story begins in the late 15th century as Spain emerged from the Reconquista, a centuries-long struggle to reclaim the Iberian Peninsula from Muslim rule. In 1492, the same year Christopher Columbus set sail under the Spanish flag, King Ferdinand II of Aragon and Queen Isabella I of Castile completed the unification of Spain. This union not only consolidated power, but also ignited a new era of exploration and expansion. Columbus's voyage was a gamble, funded by the Spanish crown in the hope of finding a western route to Asia's riches. Instead, he landed in the Caribbean, opening the door to the New World. Spain quickly capitalized on this discovery, sending conquistadors like Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro to claim vast territories. Cortés conquered the Aztec Empire in 1521, while Pizarro toppled the Inca Empire in 1533. These victories brought unimaginable wealth, gold, silver, and gems that flowed back to Spain, fueling its rise. But Spain's ambitions extended beyond the Americas. In 1521, Ferdinand Magellan, sailing for Spain, became the first European to cross the Pacific Ocean, claiming the Philippines for the crown. This established Spain's presence in Asia, where it would vie for control of the spice trade. By the 16th century, Spain had built an empire on which the sun never set, its territories spanning 4 continents. The Golden Age of Empire, the 16th and 17th centuries, marked the zenith of Spanish power, a time when the empire's wealth seemed limitless. Silver from the mines of Potosi in Bolivia flooded Europe, inflating economies and financing Spain's military adventures. The Spanish Armada, a fleet of 130 ships, was a symbol of this might, though its defeat by England in 1588 was a blow to prestige. Spain's Golden Age was also a time of cultural flourishing. The empire's vast domains brought new ideas, art, and literature. Writers like Miguel de Cervantes captured the spirit of the era in Don Quixote, a tale of chivalry and illusion. Artists like El Greco and Diego Velázquez painted masterpieces that blended European and colonial influences. The Baroque style, with its dramatic flair, spread from Spain to its colonies, leaving a lasting mark on architecture and art. But this splendor masked deeper issues. The influx of silver caused inflation, eroding the economy. Corruption plagued the administration, and the rigid class system stifled innovation. The empire's religious zeal, fueled by the Inquisition, led to the expulsion of Jews and Muslims, depriving Spain of valuable talent. As the gold flowed, so did the seeds of decline, conflicts, and cracks. Spain's power was built on conquest, but it was sustained by war. The empire was constantly embroiled in conflicts, from the 80 Years' War with the Netherlands to the 30 Years' War in Europe. These wars drained the treasury and stretched resources thin. The defeat of the Armada in 1588 was a turning point, signaling the beginning of Spain's naval decline and emboldening rivals like England and France. In the colonies, unrest simmered. The brutal treatment of indigenous peoples and enslaved Africans led to rebellions and resistance. The encomienda system, which granted colonists control over native labor, was rife with abuse, sowing seeds of discontent that would erupt centuries later. Meanwhile, the empire's rigid Catholicism clashed with Protestant movements in Europe, fueling religious wars that further weakened Spain. By the 17th century, the empire was in decline. The Habsburg dynasty, with its inbred monarchs, produced weak leaders like Charles II, whose death in 1700 sparked the War of the Spanish Succession. The Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 stripped Spain of many European territories, and the Bourbon reforms of the 18th century could not reverse the tide. The sunset of an empire, the 19th century brought the empire's final unraveling. Inspired by the American and French revolutions, colonial independence movements erupted across Latin America. Leaders like Simón Bolívar and José de San Martín led successful rebellions, and by 1825, most of Spain's American colonies had gained freedom. The loss was devastating, stripping Spain of its wealth and prestige. The empire clung to Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines, but the Spanish-American War of 1898 proved the final blow. Defeated by the United States, Spain lost its last major colonies, marking the end of its global empire. The disaster of 98, as it was called in Spain, plunged the nation into introspection and decline. Yet the Spanish Empire's legacy endures. It spread the Spanish language to over 500 million speakers, shaped cultures from Mexico to the Philippines, and left architectural marvels like the Alhambra and colonial cities in the Americas. Its influence on art, literature, and cuisine is felt worldwide. But this legacy is double-edged, marked by the horrors of colonialism, slavery, and cultural erasure. As we reflect on this chapter of history, we are left with questions. What if Spain had reformed its empire sooner? How different might the world be today? The Spanish Empire's story is a reminder that power is fleeting, that empires rise and fall like the tides, and that the echoes of their legacy continue to shape our world long after their sun has set. The Han Empire, China's golden age of innovation. Imagine a land where the Yellow River flows like a dragon through fertile plains, nourishing a civilization that would rise to unprecedented heights of power and ingenuity. This is ancient China during the Han Dynasty, an empire that lasted over 400 years and set the standard for imperial rule. From 206 BCE to 220 CE, the Han Empire unified a vast territory, fostered cultural and technological advancements, and established a legacy that still echoes in modern China. But how did a rebel leader rise from the ashes of the Qin dynasty to found this enduring empire? What secrets of innovation and expansion made the Han a beacon of progress? And what internal forces led to its eventual fragmentation? Let us journey back to a time of emperors and enigmas to uncover the story of an empire that shaped the Middle Kingdom, the birth of a dynasty. Our tale begins in the chaotic aftermath of the Qin dynasty's collapse. The Qin, under the tyrannical first emperor, had unified China but ruled with an iron fist, imposing harsh laws and massive projects like the Great Wall. Resentment simmered, and in 209 BCE, rebellions erupted. From this turmoil emerged Liu Bang, a humble peasant turned rebel leader. Born in 256 BCE, Liu Bang was an unlikely hero, charismatic but uneducated, cunning but not ruthless. He rallied followers with promises of justice and led them against the Qin forces. By 202 BCE, Liu Bang had defeated his rivals, including the noble Xiang Yu, in a series of battles that would inspire operas and legends. He proclaimed himself Emperor Gaozu, founding the Han dynasty. But Gaozu was no tyrant. He learned from the Qin's mistakes. He reduced taxes, abolished harsh laws, and established a merit-based bureaucracy, blending Confucian ideals with legalist efficiency. This balance became the Han's secret weapon, fostering stability and loyalty. Yet the early years were fraught with challenges, rebellions from former allies, and threats from nomadic tribes like the Xiongnu. How did Gaozu navigate these perils to secure his dynasty? Gaozu's successors built on his foundation. Empress Lu Ji, his wife, wielded power after his death in 195 BCE, ruling through her son and manipulating the court with ruthless ambition. Her regency was marked by intrigue and purges, but it stabilized the empire. The real golden age dawned under Emperor Wen and Emperor Jing, who promoted peace and prosperity. They reduced corvée labor, encouraged agriculture, and embraced Confucianism as the state ideology, shifting from Qin legalism. The golden age of expansion. The Han Empire's zenith came under Emperor Wu, who ruled from 141 to 87 BCE. Known as Wu the Marshal, he was a visionary leader who expanded the empire's borders and opened new horizons. Wu launched campaigns against the Xiongnu, nomadic raiders who threatened the northern frontiers. His general, Huo Qubing, led daring raids deep into enemy territory, capturing vast lands and securing the Silk Road. The Silk Road was the Han's lifeline to the world. Stretching from China to Rome, it carried silk, tea, and porcelain westward, while bringing horses, grapes, and ideas eastward. Zhang Qian, Wu's envoy, ventured into Central Asia, forging alliances and opening trade routes that would connect east and west for centuries. This exchange wasn't just about goods. It spread Buddhism to China, enriching the empire's culture. Wu's reign was also an era of innovation. The Han invented paper, the seismograph, and the magnetic compass, tools that would revolutionize knowledge and navigation. Confucian academies flourished, producing scholars who staffed the bureaucracy. But Wu's ambitions came at a cost. Heavy taxes funded his wars, leading to peasant unrest and rebellions. His later years were marked by paranoia as he executed officials on whims and sought immortality through alchemists. What drove this mighty emperor to such extremes? And how did his legacy endure despite his flaws? Cultural and technological flourishing. The Han Empire was not just about conquest. It was a cradle of culture and technology. The invention of paper by Kai Lun in 105 CE revolutionized record keeping and spread knowledge. The seismograph, a bronze urn with dragons and frogs, detected earthquakes from afar. The compass guided traders along the Silk Road, while water clocks and sundials measured time with precision. Confucianism became the state ideology, emphasizing hierarchy, filial piety, and moral governance. The civil service exam system, based on Confucian classics, selected officials on merit, creating a stable bureaucracy. Literature thrived. Sima Qian's Records of the Grand Historian chronicled China's past, setting a standard for historical writing. Women, though confined by Confucian norms, held influence in the court. Empress Lu and Empress Dowager Deng wielded power behind the throne. Art reflected the era's prosperity. Jade carvings, silk paintings, and lacquerware adorned palaces. But beneath this splendor, social inequalities festered, setting the stage for unrest. The empire's twilight. The Han Empire's decline began in the 2nd century CE. The Eastern Han, after a brief usurpation by Wang Mang, faced internal strife. Eunuchs and consort clans vied for power, corrupting the court. Peasant rebellions erupted, the most devastating being the Yellow Turban Rebellion in 184 CE, a millenarian uprising that weakened the central government. Warlords rose, and the empire fractured. In 220 CE, the last Han emperor abdicated, marking the end of the dynasty and the beginning of the Three Kingdoms period. The fall was a culmination of corruption, economic strain, and external threats from nomadic tribes. Yet the Han's legacy endured. Its name became synonymous with the Chinese people, who still call themselves Han. The Han Empire's story is one of triumph and tragedy, a reminder that even the greatest powers are mortal. It invites us to reflect on the forces that build and destroy civilizations, and to wonder what lessons we can learn from their rise and fall. The Byzantine Empire, the eastern bastion of Rome. Imagine a city where the spires of grand churches pierce the sky, and the walls of an impregnable fortress stand guard against the tides of history. This is Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire, a realm that rose from the ashes of Rome to become a beacon of culture, faith, and power for over 1,000 years. From 330 CE to 1453 CE, the Byzantine Empire bridged the ancient and medieval worlds, preserving the legacy of Rome while forging its own path. But how did this eastern offshoot of Rome survive when the West fell? What secrets lay behind its legendary walls? And what forces finally brought this mighty empire to its knees? Let us journey back to a time of emperors and enigmas to uncover the story of an empire that shaped the world we know today, the birth of Byzantium. Our tale begins in 330 CE, when Emperor Constantine the Great founded a new capital on the site of the ancient city of Byzantium. He named it Nova Roma, New Rome, but it would soon be known as Constantinople, the city of Constantine. This strategic location, straddling Europe and Asia, guarded the crossroads of trade and power. Constantine envisioned it as the new heart of the Roman Empire, a Christian bastion against the barbarian hordes that threatened the West. As the Western Roman Empire crumbled under invasions in 476 CE, the Eastern Empire, later called Byzantine, endured. Its survival was no accident. The Byzantines inherited Rome's administrative genius, but adapted it to their needs. They developed a complex bureaucracy, a professional army, and a navy that ruled the seas. The empire's economy thrived on trade, its markets filled with silk, spices, and gold from distant lands. But the true strength lay in its faith. Constantine's conversion to Christianity in 312 CE set the stage for the empire to become the guardian of Orthodox Christianity. Its churches, some like Hagia Sophia, a testament to divine glory. Under emperors like Justinian the 527-565 CE, the empire reached its zenith. Justinian dreamed of restoring Rome's glory, reconquering lost territories in Italy, North Africa, and Spain. His general Belisarius led daring campaigns, reclaiming vast lands. Justinian also codified Roman law in the Corpus Juris Civilis, a legal masterpiece that influenced Europe for centuries. But his ambitions came at a cost. Taxes soared, plagues ravaged the population, and rebellions simmered. What drove Justinian to such heights? Was it divine inspiration or earthly ambition? The iconoclast controversy. The Byzantine Empire was not just a political power, it was a spiritual fortress. Christianity was woven into every aspect of life. But this faith brought its own storms. In the 8th century, the iconoclast controversy tore the empire apart. Emperor Leo III, fearing idolatry, banned religious icons, ordering their destruction. Churches were stripped, artists persecuted, and society divided. Supporters saw it as purifying the faith. Opponents viewed it as heresy. The controversy raged for over a century, with empresses like Irene championing icons and restoring them in 787 CE. But the divide lingered, weakening the empire and alienating the West, contributing to the Great Schism of 1044 CE, when the Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches split. This schism reshaped Christianity, but what if icons had been banned forever? Would the empire have endured or fallen sooner? The age of the Macedonian dynasty, the 9th to 11th centuries, marked a renaissance under the Macedonian dynasty. Emperors like Basil II, known as the Bulgar Slayer, expanded the empire, conquering Bulgaria and securing the Balkans. The economy flourished, with Constantinople a hub of trade, its markets overflowing with silk, spices, and ivory. Art and literature thrived. The Hagia Sophia's mosaics gleamed, and scholars preserved ancient texts, bridging antiquity and the Renaissance. But this golden age hid fractures. The theme system, where soldiers received land for service, began to fail as wealth concentrated in the hands of a few. Corruption crept in, and the military, once invincible, grew complacent. The Battle of Manzikert in 1071 CE was a turning point. The Seljuk Turks defeated the Byzantines, opening Anatolia to Turkish settlement and marking the beginning of the empire's long decline. The Crusades and betrayal. The Crusades, launched in 1095 CE to reclaim the Holy Land, brought temporary alliances but ultimate betrayal. The Fourth Crusade in 1204 CE, diverted by Venetian intrigue, sacked Constantinople instead of Jerusalem. The city, once impregnable, fell to its fellow Christians, its treasures looted, its people massacred. The Hagia Sophia was desecrated, and the empire fractured into Latin and Greek states. The Byzantines reclaimed Constantinople in 1261 CE under Michael VIII Palaeologus, but the empire was a shadow of its former self. Weakened and isolated, it faced threats from all sides: the Ottomans in the east, the Venetians in the west, and internal strife within. The Palaeologus dynasty struggled to hold on, but the writing was on the wall: the fall of Constantinople. In 1453 CE, the end came. Sultan Mehmed II, the Conqueror, laid siege to Constantinople with an army of 80,000 and massive cannons. For 53 days, the Byzantines, led by Emperor Constantine V, held out against overwhelming odds. But on May 29th, the walls were breached and the city fell. Constantine died fighting, his body never found, adding to the legend. Mehmed entered as a victor, converting the Hagia Sophia into a mosque and renaming the city Istanbul. The fall marked the end of the Byzantine Empire, the last vestige of Rome. But its legacy lived on. The Ottomans adopted many Byzantine traditions, and the empire's scholars fled to the west, sparking the Renaissance with their knowledge of Greek classics. The Byzantine Empire's story is one of resilience, a 1,000-year bridge between ancient and modern worlds. It preserved Roman law, Greek culture, and Orthodox Christianity, influencing Europe and the Middle East. But mysteries remain. What lost knowledge vanished with Constantinople's fall? What treasures lie hidden in Istanbul's depths? And how might history have differed if the empire had endured? These questions linger, inviting us to ponder the echoes of a lost world. The Abbasid Empire, the golden age of Islam and its enduring enigmas. Imagine a city where the air is thick with the scent of spices and the sound of scholars debating under the flickering light of oil lamps. This is Baghdad in the 9th century, the heart of the Abbasid Empire, a realm that stretched from the Atlantic to the Indus, a beacon of knowledge, culture, and power. The Abbasids, who ruled from 750 to 1258 CE, transformed the Islamic world into a hub of innovation and learning. But their story is one of rise, splendor, and mysterious decline. How did a dynasty born from revolution become the patrons of a golden age? What secrets lay behind their legendary house of wisdom? And what forces conspired to bring this mighty empire to its knees? Let us journey back to a time of caliphs and conquests to uncover the enigmas of the Abbasid Empire, a civilization whose legacy continues to shape our world. The revolution that gave birth to an empire. Our tale begins in the mid-8th century when the Umayyad Caliphate, the first great Islamic empire, began to crumble under the weight of corruption and inequality. The Umayyads, centered in Damascus, favored Arab elites, leaving non-Arabs and the poor to fester in resentment. From this discontent arose the Abbasids, descendants of the Prophet Muhammad's uncle, Abbas. They promised justice, equality, and a return to true Islamic values. In 750 CE, their forces, led by Abu al-Abbas al-Safa, defeated the Umayyads at the Battle of the Zab, marking the birth of the Abbasid Caliphate. Al-Safa, known as the Bloodshedder, purged the Umayyad remnants with ruthless efficiency, but his brother, Al-Mansur, would build the empire's foundations. In 762 CE, Al-Mansur founded Baghdad as the new capital, a city designed with geometric precision, its round layout symbolizing unity and strength. Baghdad quickly became a melting pot of cultures, drawing scholars, merchants, and artisans from across the world. But the Abbasids' rise was not without mystery. How did they rally such diverse groups, Persians, Arabs, and even non-Muslims under their banner? Was it charisma, cunning, or something more divine? The Golden Age and the House of Wisdom. Under caliphs like Harun al-Rashid and al-Mamun, the Abbasid Empire entered its Golden Age, a time when knowledge flowed like the Tigris and Euphrates. Harun al-Rashid, immortalized in the Arabian Nights, was a patron of the arts, his court a haven for poets and musicians. But it was al-Mamun who truly ignited the intellectual fire. In 830 CE, he founded the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, a library, academy, and translation center that became the empire's crowning achievement. Scholars from Greece and India, Persia, and beyond gathered here, translating ancient texts into Arabic. Aristotle's philosophy, Ptolemy's astronomy, and Euclid's geometry were preserved and expanded upon, blending with Islamic thought to create a renaissance of science and culture. Al-Khwarizmi developed algebra, Al-Razi advanced medicine, and Ibn Sina wrote the Canon of Medicine, a text that would influence Europe for centuries. The House of Wisdom was a beacon, illuminating the world during Europe's dark ages. But what fueled this thirst for knowledge? Was it a divine mandate or a strategic move to consolidate power? The empire's cultural tapestry. The Abbasid Empire was a mosaic of cultures, a realm where diversity was not just tolerated, but celebrated. Arabs, Persians, Turks, and Africans coexisted, their traditions blending into a rich tapestry. This cultural fusion gave birth to wonders like the Arabian Nights, a collection of tales that captured the empire's imagination. Poetry flourished under figures like Abu Nuwas, whose verses celebrated wine, love, and life. Architecture soared with the construction of grand mosques and palaces, their intricate designs a testament to the empire's artistic prowess. But the empire's golden age was not without its shadows. Political intrigue festered in the Caliphal court, with viziers like the Barmakids rising and falling in dramatic fashion. The Abbasids' shift from Arab centrism to Persian influence sparked tensions, leading to rebellions and civil wars. The Zanj Rebellion in 869 CE, a slave uprising in southern Iraq, was one of the bloodiest, lasting 14 years and shaking the empire's foundations. What drove these conflicts? Was it inequality or a deeper struggle for the soul of Islam? The Mongol storm and the fall. By the 13th century, the Abbasid Empire was in decline. Internal strife, corruption, and the rise of regional powers weakened the caliphate. The empire fragmented, its once unified realm divided into semi-independent states. The final blow came from the east, in the form of the Mongol hordes led by Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan. In 1258, Hulagu's forces laid siege to Baghdad. The city, once the center of the world, fell after a brutal assault. The Mongols sacked the House of Wisdom, throwing its priceless manuscripts into the Tigris, turning the river black with ink. Caliph al-Mustasim was executed, rolled in a carpet and trampled by horses, a death befitting a ruler who had lost his way. The fall of Baghdad marked the end of the Abbasid Caliphate, a cataclysm that sent shockwaves through the Islamic world. But the empire's fall was not just one of conquest. It was a time of profound loss. The destruction of Baghdad's libraries erased centuries of knowledge, a cultural catastrophe that would take generations to recover. Yet the Abbasids' legacy endured, their contributions to science, philosophy, and art becoming the foundation of the Islamic Renaissance. As we reflect on this chapter of history, we are left with questions. What if the Abbasids had reformed their empire sooner? How different might the world be today? The Abbasid story is a reminder that even the greatest empires are mortal, their legacies a blend of light and shadow. The Inca Empire, the mysterious realm of the sun. Picture a vast, rugged landscape where towering mountains pierce the clouds and terraced fields cascade down like steps to the heavens. This is the world of the Inca Empire, a realm that stretched over 2,500 miles along the western coast of South America, from modern-day Ecuador to Chile. Rising in the 13th century and reaching its zenith in the 15th, the Incas built a civilization of astonishing complexity, where gold flowed like water and the sun was worshipped as a god. Yet for all its grandeur, the empire vanished almost overnight, leaving behind enigmas that continue to baffle historians. How did a people without wheels or writing create such an advanced society? What secrets lie hidden in their sacred sites? And what cataclysmic events led to their sudden downfall? This is the final chapter in our journey through the most powerful empires in history, a tale of ambition, innovation, and mystery that will leave you pondering long into the night. The birth of an empire. Our story begins in the 13th century in the high Andes of Peru, where a small tribe known as the Inca emerged from the mists of legend. According to their myths, the first Inca ruler, Manco Capac, was sent by the sun god Inti to civilize the world, founding the city of Cusco as the empire's capital. From this humble origin, the Incas expanded with remarkable speed, conquering neighboring tribes through a combination of military might, diplomacy, and strategic marriages. By the 15th century, under the reign of Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui, the empire had become a powerhouse. Pachacuti, meaning earthshaker, reorganized the Inca society, establishing a centralized government and a system of taxation based on labor rather than money. He divided the empire into 4 provinces, each governed by a loyal official, ensuring control from Cusco. But Pachacuti's greatest legacy was his building program. He transformed Cusco into a magnificent city with temples dedicated to Inti and palaces adorned with gold. His vision extended beyond the capital as he ordered the construction of a vast road network that would connect the empire's far-flung territories. The Inca roads, known as the Chapac Ñan, stretched over 25,000 miles, a feat of engineering that rivaled the Romans. These roads, paved with stone and bridged over ravines, facilitated trade, communication, and military movement. Messengers, called shaski, ran relays along the paths, delivering messages at astonishing speeds. But how did the Incas build such an extensive system without wheels or draft animals? Their secret lay in organized labor and ingenious techniques, like using llamas for transport and terracing mountains for agriculture. The pinnacle of Inca achievement. The Inca Empire reached its zenith under Pachacuti's successors, Topa Inca Yupanqui and Huayna Capac. Topa expanded the empire southward into Chile and eastward into the Amazon, while Huayna consolidated these gains. At its peak, the empire encompassed over 10 million people, a mosaic of cultures unified under Inca rule. The Incas were master builders. Machu Picchu, perched high in the Andes, is their most famous legacy, a citadel of stone that seems to defy gravity. Built in the 15th century, its purpose remains a mystery. Was it a royal estate, a religious site, or a fortress? Its terraces, temples, and water channels showcase Inca engineering, with stones fitted so tightly that not even a knife blade can slip between them. The Intihuatana stone, aligned with the sun, suggests astronomical significance, a calendar etched in rock. The Incas worshipped Inti and the sun god, and their rulers were seen as his descendants. Temples like the Coricancha in Cusco were covered in gold, symbolizing the sun's radiance. But their religion was tolerant, incorporating local deities to ease conquests. Agriculture was sacred. They terraced mountains and built irrigation systems to feed their people. Quinoa, potatoes, and maize were staples, sustaining an empire in harsh terrain. Socially, the Incas were organized. The Ailu system grouped families for collective labor, while the Emita required public service. This ensured efficiency, but also control. The Incas had no writing but used quipu, knotted strings, for records. How did they govern without script? The quipu's knots encoded numbers and narratives, a lost art that intrigues scholars. The shadows of decline. The empire's peak was brief. Huayna Capach's death in 1527 sparked a civil war between his sons, Huascar and Atahualpa. Atahualpa emerged victorious, but the conflict weakened the empire. Then came the Spanish. In 1532, Francisco Pizarro arrived with 180 men. Through treachery, he captured Atahualpa at Cajamarca, demanding a ransom of gold. The Incas filled a room with treasure, but Pizarro executed Atahualpa anyway, shattering the empire. The Spanish conquest was swift and brutal. Diseases like smallpox decimated the population, while superior weapons and horses overwhelmed Inca armies. By the 1572, the last Inca stronghold fell, and the empire was no more. But why did such a powerful civilization collapse so quickly? The Civil War, diseases, and Spanish tactics played roles, but the Incas' centralized structure, dependent on the emperor's divine authority, crumbled when that authority was challenged. A legacy shrouded in mystery. The Inca Empire's legacy is etched in stone. Machu Picchu, rediscovered in 1911 by Hiram Bingham, stands as a testament to their ingenuity. The roads, terraces, and aqueducts showcase their engineering. Their calendar, aligned with the sun, guided agriculture and rituals. The Incas revered nature, their gods tied to the land, Inti the sun, Pachamama the earth mother. But mysteries remain. How did they cut and fit stones so perfectly without iron tools? What was Machu Picchu's true purpose? And what of the quipu? Could they hold lost knowledge? The Incas had no writing, so their history was oral, leaving gaps filled by Spanish chroniclers, biased and incomplete. Recent discoveries, like hidden Incan sites, hint at more to uncover. The empire's fall was tragic. The Spanish looted gold, destroyed temples, and imposed Christianity, erasing much of Inca culture. Yet descendants preserved traditions in the Andes. The Inca story is one of rise and ruin, a reminder that even the mightiest can fall, but their spirit endures. As we reflect on this ancient enigma, we are left with a sense of wonder at the mysteries that still lie hidden in the Andes. The Inca Empire invites us to explore, to question, and to learn from the past as we shape the future.